Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just some Aussie gamer, and welcome to Democracy 4. This is obviously the fourth line of the game in the Democracy series. It's a game by Positech Games. I'll leave the link in the description. Democracy 4 is currently in development phase still, so there's a lot of things that'll be changed and updated, improved, balanced, etc. But for the meanwhile, let's get started. They've just updated the game on the 12th of September, so let's see what's new. So it appears we now have three countries: the UK, the United States of America, and the new one, which is Germany. So let's do Germany in this playthrough, and let's do three parties. In this playthrough, I want to take a centrist stance on Germany and basically focus on trying to get everyone wealthy, happy. Just any of the modifiers in the game and the way the game's set up, just basically go in there, try and improve everything that needs improvement within the country, increase everyone's opinion to, be in the green, and basically try and appease everybody, which is basically impossible to do in the political world. So, let's call ourselves the centrists. Nice and simple. There we go. Just making sure I spelled that correctly because it looks weird. Yes, I have. That's all good. Yep. All that. Let's just leave it standard at this moment in time. So let's play. Alright. Where are we at here? So, okay. So it's 5-year terms. That's interesting. So we have a decent GDP, average health, awesome education. Okay, that's cool. Unemployment is very high, crime is quite high, but poverty is nice and lowish. Okay, cool. What do we got? We got a deficit of 6.4 billion euros per turn and a debt of 2.3 trillion euros. Whew, okay, right, awesome. Well, so... okay, wait, let me click on that. That is interesting. Anyway, let's, obviously one of the biggest issues that this game has depicted in Germany is the crime rate. So, let's deal with the police force, which is currently on medium. Let's fully fund that police force. Let's get that crime rate right back down. So that's only 4 political capital. That seems very, cheap. Now, I don't necessarily want to go to armed police or anything like that yet. So that's... okay, so alcohol abuse is a thing. Right. So, let's start off small. Where would it be? Is there an alcohol awareness or alcohol abuse awareness campaign? Policy? Why do I think there is an alcohol awareness campaign? I wonder if it's maybe already been implemented and it's not doing anything. Alright, let's go. Jeez, this new update has made the game very flashy. Like when you hover over something, it is straight away showing you what it is, whereas there previously used to be a bit of lag. So that's a little bit disconcerting, I'm not going to lie to you. Solidarity tax. Oh yes, that's the tax when they reunificated East and West Germany. Okay. I'll leave where that is at the moment, because I'm pretty sure I read somewhere recently that it's going to end soon. So, yeah. So, alcohol consumption, alcohol law, minimum age 16. Let's leave that where that is for the moment. What I am looking for is an alcohol tax. Does Germany not have an alcohol tax? Germany does not have an alcohol tax. And I don't have enough capital to introduce it either. Right. Okay. So that would explain the fact that alcohol abuse is through the roof. Alright. Well, we've got to get the political capital per turn up before we can go sorting out the alcohol tax. So, you know, it's pretty common that the alcohol consumption is probably the cause of the crime rate. And yeah, I'm wondering if maybe having funded the police so much that it may help us. So that's the alcohol. Yeah, so I don't want to change the alcohol law from 16, but maybe I should up it to 18. Just because I obviously can't afford the alcohol tax at the moment. Not that I want to introduce a huge alcohol tax, but we need to do something about getting the alcohol consumption under control. So, even though I don't want to do it, because it's nice and cheap at the moment, in comparison to the others, I'm going to raise the minimum drinking age to 18. But, if everything goes to plan, I should be able to lower it back down at a later date without causing too many issues. That's the point. Oh, jeez, everything I hover over is just like, bang! Here, this is what this is about. And I don't necessarily want that. I'm looking specifically for community policing. Which also doesn't appear, unless I'm blind, does not appear to be a policy in Germany either. Right. Okay, that's yeah. Okay, community policing, but it's cheap. Okay. Well, seeing as I'm pretty sure community policing in this game is actually broken and is 10 times more useful than what it should be in real life, we're going to implement it and we're going to drag it up to maximum. Still got 4 political capital left. Okay. So, drug addiction. So it's not flashing at us, so it's not... Yeah, it's not out of control, but it has started. And it is putting a serious strain on the healthcare system. Okay. So, I need to look into Germany's healthcare. Oh my god, things stop flashing. That's going to get really annoying. I hope they update that ASAP. So, state health is... Where? No. So I can't even like hover over these things properly, and then everything sort of just like disappears when you hover over it. It's not... Yeah. Ah, alcohol awareness campaign. There we go. Let's take that right up. And seeing as we've only got small amounts of political capital, let's get some campaigns going. So let's get a tourism campaign and let's fund it to the max. That should help to increase our GDP and maybe help to reduce our debt. And I think we've spent all our political capital. We've got 1 left. Let's just go to the next turn. So, unemployment dropped. Cool. We've gone from 10% to 26% in the polls. Organised crime is hanging around on the start trigger, but the fact that we've implemented so many law and order things in the previous turn should help. We're running a small budget deficit, and the GDP increased. I'm assuming the GDP increased because unemployment decreased. So that's the other thing we have to focus on, as well as getting the crime rate down, is we have to get people into employment. So that's what I'm going to focus more on this turn, so we can get a nice balance between the two things and not feel like we're just, prosecuting people for doing the bad thing and not necessarily offering them a way to rehabilitate themselves into society. So we're going to do a business startup campaign, and we're going to fund it to the max, and I know that's going to cost 124 million euros per turn, but for the effects that it should bring to the country, that is nothing. So we'll fund that. We will fund small business grants as well, and we will absolutely fund that to the maximum. That's going to be significantly more expensive at 6.45 billion euros per turn. But again, it's going to give a huge boost to the economy. So that's 6 political capital left. So what else can we do here? We can do a young entrepreneur scheme. So this is going to get people into the idea of potentially creating their own businesses and understanding economics and all that from a young age. And that is going to help the next generations to be employed and hopefully drop the crime rate. So that brings us down to 0 political capital. There's a dilemma for me to resolve. Violent video games. So I'm not going to censor the games, but I'm also not going to leave it unchanged. I'm going to add warning labels because that seems like the best sort of centrist view, and that's what I'm trying to do in this playthrough. So I'm just going to add the warning labels. Supposedly it pisses the youth of Germany off that I've added warning labels to their games. Honestly, I think that that might need to be looked at in the balancing of the game, because I don't see adding a label to a game as being detrimental to the game itself. Anyway, next turn. So she's not exactly a role model. So I'm going to decline the offer because I want to set a good example for the youth of this country. So, unemployment down a little bit, which is good. Crime down. Budget deficit is up slightly, but that, unfortunately, that budget deficit is going to increase before it decreases because we have to put so much money into dealing with the crime and the unemployment. We've also bumped up to 50. We'd get 59% of the vote in an election. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that after just 2 turns. So, what the expenditure and income is telling me about the game's overview of the current German government is that they don't tax people, but they also don't really spend any money on their population either. So it's sort of up to everyone to fend for themselves. Now, I don't mind that idea, but it's very clear, at least in the game's eyes, that some things need to be done. So I want to obviously try and stay and keep Germany as free as it currently appears to be of government interference, but at the same time I do want to fix the issues that the game sees Germany as having. Alright, so we did crime-related things in the first turn, and we did business-related things in this turn. Sorry, the previous turn. So in this turn, let's see what other normal law and order policies we can implement. And the reason I say normal is I don't want to implement crazy law and order policies. I just want to make it obvious that people are not going to be able to get away with the level of crime that they previously had. So, violent crime has been warned to us as being potentially a situation that may start to jump up. I mean, it's just jumped above the start trigger, but it may become worse. And even though we've implemented a lot of crime-related things, I'm going to implement the witness protection program and fund it to the absolute maximum, because that's going to help to reduce any potential violent crime that still might be hanging around. Then we'll go back to law and order. And legal aid, I think, is a good policy. Even though it increases socialist opinion, it helps with the equality of the country, people who are poor. It increases the amount that people who are considered to be poor earnings make. And it should help, hopefully, to reduce our crime rate. And I'm going to fund that to the maximum as well. Now, I know it feels like I'm just policy, but for this country to go anywhere based on the parameters that the game gave us, I have to fix the alcohol consumption, the crime, and the unemployment. So that's the things I'm going to focus on. And I also need to be aware of the fact that if and once I start to gain more political capital, that I do in fact need to introduce some sort of alcohol tax. Nothing crazy to start with, maybe like 10%, and just see what sort of effect that has. I'm fully aware that when alcohol abuse is considered to be that high by the game's parameters, it's going to take a bit of time for me to get it down. I got 4 political capital. I'm sort of tempted to take it over to the next turn, because obviously I do want to implement that alcohol tax. So let's see where we're at. Unemployment down again. Crime is down. What's this? Richest company pays no tax. Yeah, you know, like, that's something we can look at if we need to. But I'm currently more interested in making everyone as rich as that richest company if it's possible. If it's not possible, then sure, you know, because I want to have an egalitarian society, I will play with things like that. But at the moment, I want to focus on crime, unemployment, alcohol abuse, improving people's wellness, not necessarily their health or ability to access health, you know, like doctors and hospitals and all that, but things that focus on people's stress levels, work-life balance, mental health. You know, I want to be able to make people's lives easier and therefore reduce the amount of stress on their mental health. So that's basically what I'm trying to achieve. So even though all I've done basically is go policy, I'm going to do one more turn of policy, and it's going to be economy related, and it's basically going to just try and get that unemployment under control. So, a Nationalist Business Council, that helps our GDP, which is going to create employment. And this gives businesses a voice, both big and small, and may also help in the scenario where that richest company pays no tax. I'm going to implement, I'm going to fund it to the max. I'm fully aware that I'm growing the deficit here, but I'm also not, because you'll see that the deficit actually dropped from the previous turn because I'm injecting money into the economy and making the economy more productive. And even though I'm spending so much money, it's actually dropping the deficit. Now, it's probably working abnormally fast, but this is a game. All it's really telling me is I, at the moment, seem to be doing an okay job and possibly even the right thing. So, yeah. Now, robotics research grants. The only problem with this is it'll provide more employment, but it will also potentially lead to higher unemployment if people don't get the education that is required to work these sorts of jobs. And it increases industrial automation, which in turn, at least at the start, increases unemployment until jobs become available for the automation side of things. So I don't think it's something I can introduce at this early point in time, unfortunately, because it will help to massively increase our technology, get us our technological advantage, and then that will cause our GDP to explode. So we're going to have to just hold on for a little bit before I go introducing something like that. Now, what's a trade council? So this is for international trade. So with the amount of businesses that I'm allowing people to start up in this country, maybe having a trade council will be beneficial, because it means that those businesses have a avenue to provide international trade. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to fund it to the maximum, because it's already 181 million euros per turn, and compared to some policies, that's pocket change, so yeah. What have I got left in terms I've still got 19 political capitals, so all these things I'm introducing are not too expensive. I want to introduce rural development grants, but I sort of think about the geography of Germany, and there's probably not actually, it's not a big country, so there's probably not actually that much space left to really take advantage fully of a policy like this. So I will introduce it, but I won't introduce it at the maximum. I'll introduce it at the medium, because that'll enable a few rural places and help with the unemployment issue, but it won't, I don't want to completely fill up all rural parts of Germany, because that completely defeats the purpose of having rural areas. So let's go with that. What have I got? 6 political capital. I'll carry that across to the next turn, and maybe with any luck we can get our hands on 30 political capital. Though it appears that alcohol abuse is falling away, and I'm wondering if that's the police force and the community policing taking effect. So maybe I'll leave that alcohol tax for the moment and just see what happens with alcohol abuse over the next few turns, especially seeing as community policing has still got 3 or 4 turns of inertia left, and the police force itself is also not fully introduced. But I will still carry my 6 political capital across to the next turn. Alright, let's see where we are. So antisocial behaviour is now dead and buried. Awesome. There is a question about housing expansion, which is probably related to the fact that we just implemented rural development grants. So for the sake of getting unemployment in this country under control, I am going to relax the planning law. I don't necessarily like doing that, because it is going to potentially cause us problems with the environment. Speaking of which, that is something I'm going to have to start to fund a little bit, because increasing our GDP and reducing our employment is going to cause extra CO2 emissions and extra pollution, and then therefore I'm going to have to do environmental related things to counteract that. So supposedly organised crime is still sitting right under the start trigger, but it has just dipped ever so slightly there at the end. So so Germany has armed police. Okay. So that's something I could increase slightly if I needed to. Gambling is causing organised crime to go up. Okay, so that's something I can definitely look at potentially reducing if required. I don't necessarily want to do that, but again, even if it's just a short-term reduction and then returning it to where it was, that's fine. The Witness Protection Program still has 10 or 11 turns of inertia before it's fully implemented. So I might leave it for a few turns and see if the Witness Protection Program actually does anything. Why is narcotics on there twice? That's interesting. Anyway, it's not become a problem yet, and I have put some policies in order to potentially stop that from occurring. The deficit has dropped to 5.46 billion, even though I'm spending so much money, and I think that's just because I'm getting the unemployment under control. Another thing that I can start potentially focusing on is people's health, so maybe introducing like a tobacco awareness campaign to try and reduce the number of people smoking, even though it doesn't appear that Germany has respiratory disease, which it's on the way up, so it's not It's not as bad as some of the countries in this game, but yeah, it could certainly do with some work. So I think I'll focus on, yeah, people's health on this turn. So public services. Let us do some reforestation. That's definitely going to help with the environment and the CO2 emissions. I'm going to go the full 100 million a year on that one. Then want to start looking at things to help improve people's health. So maybe a drug treatment scheme. Yeah, so this, I don't want to punish people for taking illegal drugs. In fact, as the government, I potentially want to tax legal drugs in the future so as to remove the black market and organised crime. But I also want to help those people who are dependent on them to get off it without, being put through the judicial system. And that will potentially reduce the crime and take the, force off of the police force to deal with all these people. So I'm going to introduce that. I'm going to fund it to the maximum, 88.5 million, which actually, for what it is, seems incredibly cheap. But anyway, and I'm also, here I am just still banging out policies. I should probably look into the health system, whether it be, where would it be? Public services, probably. Whether it be like a healthcare vouchers or is... Okay, so Germany doesn't have healthcare vouchers and it doesn't have a state health service, according to this game anyway. So which one is going to... So that's going to cost, if I fully fund it, 76.26 billion per turn. And that's going to cost 74.09 billion per turn. Right. There's not really much difference there. I think the only difference is the estimated effects on the state health service compared with private healthcare, is that a lot more people appear to be benefited. Well, a lot more poorer people appear to be benefited because the income of the wealthy and all that goes down. Whereas with the healthcare vouchers, it does everything except reduce people's wealth. It increases everyone's wealth. Which means that even though, I'm probably not going to fund that to the full 76.26 billion, at least not at this point, because that would just spiral our deficit out of control way too early on. So I will probably, out of those two, go with healthcare vouchers. Maybe even in the next turn. What have I got 11 political capital. I wonder if I save that for the next turn, if I can then implement the healthcare vouchers. Yeah, I might actually do that, because improving the country's health, even though it's not great, it's not terrible either. Yeah. And here we go. Because the GDP is absolutely skyrocketing, so is pollution. So I'm going to need to spend some political capital on getting that environment back under control. Because reforestation, as good as it is, it takes 16 turns of inertia to implement. But, whew, the GDP's just gone bang. It's amazing what happens when you employ people and get the crime down. We're already up to 76% of the vote from 10%. Yeah. Look at our GDP to debt ratio. It's only 82.06%. And if I'm not mistaken, we are now running a surplus as well, despite the amount of money that we've been spending. So, let me do some healthcare vouchers. Not sure I want to spend 30 billion. At least... So where does it change to low? It changes to low at 30 billion. So I reckon somewhere around there. I know that's... Yeah, I'll go there because it's only going to cost me 6 political capital, whereas I know that's still 22.33 billion, but I can reduce that if it has a really quick effect on the health system. So I know that's going to probably put us in a budget deficit. Now, need to implement some policies that will help the environment. So, what? I think I more need to adjust what's already. So clean energy subsidies, let's bump that right up to the very maximum, even though it was basically already there. An organic farming subsidy, does that help the environment, or does it just increase the opinion of environmentalists? It just increases the opinion of the environmentalists. At the moment, that's extremely high, so I'm not interested. State energy company, workers on boards, young entrepreneur scheme, work safety law. What's that at? Medium. I'm okay with that at the moment. Medium is right in the middle, seems the most balanced. Smart meter program, what's this? This increases energy efficiency. And of course, increasing energy efficiency is potentially going to take us closer to a technological advantage. Yup, let's spend up big on that one. That may have been a mistake, but whatever. At the moment, we are here to make mistakes and potentially do the right thing as well, like most politicians, and pretend that we know what we're doing. So at the moment, pollution controls is government targets. Okay. Well, let's get in ahead of the potential pollution scenario that may be about to hit the start trigger. I know that's going to kill our GDP by nearly 5% total, but we need to do something about it because otherwise respiratory disease will become a thing. Now, how's obesity? Obesity is about to actually go up even further than what it already is, and that's going to be part of the reason why the health of the nation is sort of middle of the road. So I wonder, let's introduce a health food subsidy because I don't want to tax junk food because I don't want to cause people to not eat junk food. I think it's important to have the ability to balance that, and I obviously don't want to put people out of business as well who serve junk food. So instead I'm going to put an incentive to eat well. I'm going to fund it to the maximum. So I've still got 10 political capital. Okay. So, let's see. Transport. What's something that I can do to potentially help the environment? Telecommuting Initiative, which is actually very popular at the moment considering the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. I know certainly here in Australia that a lot of people are working from home. So I think I'll do a telecommuting initiative because it reduces car usage massively. I know trade unionists are benefited and commuters, good for them, that's great. Like they're happier about it, that's awesome. But I don't know, it just seems like it's going to help the environment massively. It's going to potentially allow us to have a massive GDP and no environmental issues. Well, less environmental issues anyway. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to fund it to the maximum as well. That leaves us with 8 political capital. Geez, all these things I'm introducing are very low political capital. What about this? Car emission limits. Let's put it to there for the moment and see what sort of effect that has, because it's actually a really cheap policy. You know what? Let's take our potential hit to our GDP now so that we can recover from it really quickly and get things back in order, and get things back in order with an environment that is not on its last legs. So I'm going to apply changes to that. That's 7 political capital. That leaves me with 1 political capital. Finally, we've managed to spend the political capital, which sounds crazy to say because we're not actually getting that much. Like I only managed to get like 26 or something on that turn, and that's because I brought some over from the previous one. So let's resolve the dilemma. Airport expansion. I am tempted to allow the plans because of the amount of money I'm now going to be injecting into the environment should potentially allow us to have that expansion plan, and it's going to provide jobs, and it's going to grow the GDP, and it's going to increase people's income, and that's what I'm here to do, make people's life easy. So let's go. Let's do it. And we'll go to the next turn. Oh, there we go. One of our local writers has won a international literary award. Awesome. That's great. So, even though I spent so many things, including money on environmental policies that would have potentially reduced the GDP, it didn't actually touch the GDP. Interesting. So we're now estimated to get 80% in the polls already, and we're like, we're not very far into our career as the leader of Germany. So that's interesting. Either we're peaking early and it's going to be problematic as we get close to the election, or we're just doing what the people like. So I want to try and get the GDP above the debt ratio, is what I want to do. But that's going to be interesting because of the amount of money I just added in the previous turn to spending on the healthcare system. That's going to take a while to funnel through into productivity. So, yeah. Okay. So, I feel like we've sort of taken the country to a relatively good place. I mean, crime is ridiculously down. And health is massively up after the last turn where I introduced healthcare vouchers. So I feel like my biggest problem right now is unemployment. So let's spend a turn introducing a few more unemployment, or should I say employment policies, and go from there. Alright, so I don't appear to have that much political capital. That's a little bit annoying. Alright, what about an enterprise investment scheme? So this enables the wealthy individuals of this country to invest their money in our small businesses. It makes people's high earnings make more money, but it will also make more people high earnings. I mean, yeah. Let's subsidize something else. I'm surprised I haven't got the achievement Subsidy Sam yet for the amount of subsidizing I've done. So 14 turns to the next election. Okay. That's a 5-year term. Right. I feel like 5 years is quite long. But maybe that's just me. So okay, so that was reforestation. I was like, what's the trees? But that makes sense. So what was I for? Oh yeah, unemployment. God, what happened to my brain then? So we can stop the flow of drugs into the country because, obviously, as the government, I want to take a similar stance to what a few states in the US have done, and I want to legalize at least cannabis, but then I want to apply a small tax to it as well, so that we can keep the drug usage at a normal, acceptable, non-crime inducing level, but also help the economy at the same time. But obviously don't want to tax people out of being able to potentially utilize legalized narcotics if they would like to. So I will do the Drug Enforcement Agency to stop the drugs coming into our country. So where are we at? 8 political capital. Okay. So let's just have a look at some things that are currently going on. State pensions. I'm almost tempted to try and turn this around to private pensions, but then provide private pensions, but like sort of regulate the market so that the private companies can't rip the elderly off. Because here in Australia, I don't know what it's like in other countries, but we have a thing called superannuation where a small percentage of your wage, when it is paid to you, goes into a superannuation fund which you're allowed to access once you retire. So this sort of acts like a state-run private pension, if you will. So I want to implement private pensions, but yeah, sort of regulate it so that the companies can't take advantage of citizens. But at the moment, I don't have enough political capital to do anything about that. Unemployment benefit. The unemployment benefit is high. Now, just because the fact that I'm funding so many things for people to get work and make it easy to get work, and, you know, having wealthy people there available to fund small businesses, I'm going to reduce this down a bit. Because at the moment, the opportunities are there for the people. Now, if that changes in the future, I will re-increase the unemployment benefit, or I'll consider a universal basic income, or I'll add in some helicopter money or whatever to sort of, because, you know, obviously I don't want to, this will increase poverty ever so slightly, and that potentially may reintroduce some crime rate. I can always play with the armed police if I have to, even if it's for a short period of time. So I'm going to apply the changes. 7 political capital. So I think I'll take this down to 12 turns, and then we'll probably call it for this episode. So I'll take across that 1 political capital to the next turn. Yes, so despite the fact that I've done some pollution-related things, it has passed the start trigger, although it has started to fall away straight away. But I will need to do more pollution-related things. Okay. Merger. A large internet company has announced plans to buy out one of its main competitors. This merger needs government approval. Because I'm in the field of small business, not necessarily trade unionists, but I'm sort of here to appease the small businesses and the new businesses of the country to help reduce that unemployment rate. I'm going to block the merger because it keeps the free market open as well. So health has taken a massive fall. Because of pollution, of course. Okay, so I definitely need to focus some serious time into the pollution, and still, the unemployment is still high. Jeez, okay. Alright. So, where would I do things related to the environment? And the other problem I've got is that I lack the political capital to do things like a green electronics initiative and rare earth metal mining. And although that's not good for the environment, it helps to us to avoid the rare earth crisis. So, recreational drugs tax. So I did say that I wanted to do this, and I will, but I will do it there. A very low recreational drugs tax. And then I need to find out where they have legal drug consumption, narcotics. Yeah, so that's where I want it to be. I don't want to go any higher or lower. Let's leave it where it is. So that will benefit the economy. It'll hopefully bring down the drug consumption a little bit and provide a little bit of an injection to the health system. So what else can I introduce? There we go. Keep the country tidy campaign. Let's do that. Fund it to the maximum. Apply that. So what else is over here? Clean energy subsidies. Eco home regulations. Yeah, I feel like that's, you know, in a country that we're going to have such a high GDP potentially within the next, few turns, I think that might be beneficial to make everyone's home eco-friendly. I know that doesn't tackle the big businesses and all that, but I don't want to necessarily tackle the big businesses in one whole go, because I don't want to cause brain drain and a corporate exodus. I want to do it slowly. I'm going to take this to universal doorstop collection, because that's basically what we have in Australia, at least where I live, and makes sense. Helps the environment, gives, more jobs, etc., etc. State Energy Company. So that's currently funded there. Sure, let's leave that where it is at the moment. We can adjust that if required. Minimum wage, nice and in the middle. Cool, that's good. Business startup campaign. Yep, no, that's not what I want. Nuclear fusion, yes. So, okay, so they're decommissioning the existing, and I'm pretty sure that's actually a realistic thing in Germany. If you're a watcher from Germany, let me know. But I'm pretty sure they have a target by 2030 or something like that, to have all nuclear regeneration completely gone from the country. Labor Day bank holiday. Now, for some reason in this game, the Labor Day bank holiday causes something ridiculous like a 3% loss to your GDP. Now, usually, I'm quite happy with the Labor Day bank holiday, but I want to cancel this policy in the game. Unless they've balanced it recently, in the recent update. Can I take that to there? Yes, I can, because I want to up the technological grants, because I want to be able to access things like quantum computing. Okay, I think I dragged it a little bit too far. There we go. Yes, where are we at? So one more turn. So alcohol abuse has subsided. Crime is now non-existent. Drug addiction or legal drug addiction. No, that's not legal drug addiction. That would be legal drug consumption. This is drug addiction. Cool. So that's those two things coming in has completely reduced crime. So there is no more crime in Germany. I feel like that was a little bit easy to complete, but there you go. Environmental protests are about to hit the start trigger, but if I keep going the way I am, with any luck, they shouldn't actually become a thing, or if they do, they'll be very minor and very short. I want to ban non-LED light bulbs, because now we have an issue with the environment, and I want to try and fix that. Our GDP is increasing at a relatively rapid rate, and I want to keep that up. We would get 90% of the vote already. I mean, whew, that's a serious increase in a seriously short period of time. And the budget deficit has dropped to 8.7 billion because crime is no longer existent and health is straight back up above where it was, where it dropped to. That's really weird. Is that because it's because I tackled drug addiction and alcohol abuse. That's interesting. Okay, so let's do some more environmental related stuff. I want to try and find... Yeah, here we go. So, let's pass fuel efficiency standards. And let's fund them to the maximum. I know this is going to annoy motorists, but it increases their income. And I know it doesn't say it's going to annoy motorists, but trust me, motorists' opinion will drop. So do that. Congestion charging, not necessarily. I want to do new car subsidies. Now, that's going to increase car usage, but it's also going to increase the GDP. It's going to help the environment because new cars are so much more environmentally friendly. It's going to reduce CO2, respiratory disease. It's going to increase people's income. And it's going to create jobs in the electric car industry. So, for me, I feel like it's a win-win-win-win-win and win. And I'm going to fund that to the maximum as well, because why not, seeing as we've funded everything else that we've introduced to the maximum. Okay, and that has taken me down to one political capital. So, let's go across next turn. Let's see where we're at before the next episode. So Henning Horn, he is the transport minister. He wants to put flags on every corner. I mean, it's going to increase patriotism, but we'll leave that for the next episode. Demand from our donor who doesn't have a photo. Okay. He wants us to introduce a frequent flyer tax. I mean, I'm sorry, Gertrude, but we've just opened a new airport with the whole idea of increasing tourism and GDP. The last thing I want to do is now tax that. That seems completely insane. Dozens of bodies have been found in the rear of a commercial truck at our border. They are foreign migrants who died trying to reach the country. Blame for this tragedy is being directed at me. Of course it is. For not patrolling the borders effectively. Okay, so maybe we need to look at the border controls in the next episode. That's fine. We have 93. Well, they suspect we would get 93% of the vote. The budget deficit is only 9.69 billion, despite the fact that we are funding the healthcare industry in this country. So the biggest problem right now is unemployment, and I've funded so many things. So I'm thinking maybe in the next episode I'll need to start looking at upping more education-related things, even though education is so high, in the hope that maybe that feeds into the unemployment. If you've got any suggestions on how I could raise the unemployment on top of what I've already done, please let me know. That would be awesome. But for now, I'm gonna call it.